Hey guys, this is Illusion Podfics, and we're going to be reading Riptide by Punk Rock Hades. The summary is, Jason's first mistake was hacking the Bat's secret comm channel. Although, could it really be called hacking when they'd never bothered to change their frequency since his Robin days? All he'd had to do was log on and boom, instant access to the best ways to avoid the meddlesome bats while he got his shit done. And since his end was carefully muted, they wouldn't even know anyone was listening. His second mistake was thinking he could listen without getting sucked back into their drama. Jason came back to Gotham with two intentions. One, protect Crime Alley and do it right this time. And two, avoid the bats. Neither of these were proving as simple as he'd hoped. Chapter 1. Jason's first mistake was hacking the Bat's secret comm channel. Although, could it really be called hacking when they'd never bothered to change their frequency since his Robin days? All he had to do was log on and, boom, instant access to the best ways to avoid the meddlesome bats while he got his shit done. And since his end was carefully muted, they wouldn't even know anyone was listening. His second mistake was thinking he could listen without getting sucked into their drama. Has anyone seen Nightwing? Robin's voice always made Jason grind his teeth, no matter how much he reminded himself that it wasn't the kid's fault that Bruce apparently needed an emotional support Robin in order to fucking function. He's following a lead in the Bowery, Robin, came the smooth, genderless voice of Oracle. Jason had yet to figure out who the Bat's new guy in the chair was, but Oracle had built up a fearsome reputation for themselves according to Jason's League intel. Whoever they were, their skills and vast network were enough for the League to be leery of them. It had Jason paranoid and extra cautious about not getting caught with his helmet off or on his street cameras. He hasn't checked in the past 3 hours, though, Robin argued, tone worried. He's been non-responsive on comms for far longer than that before, Robin, Oracle reassured the replacement. Batman made a grunt of agreement across the comms. The dynamic duo had split up earlier in the evening, with Batman apparently deciding it was safe enough for baby birds to fly out of the nest unsupervised, despite what had happened to the last Robin caught out by himself. Not since, There was an awkward pause, where some memory Jason wasn't privy to hung in the air, and then the replacement was hurrying to cover. Not since I've been Robin. Nightwing's always checked in. He knows that Batman... We'd worry if he was gone without checking in for far too long. Jason wondered idly what could have possibly happened to get Dick to actually check in so that Bruce wouldn't worry about him on patrol. Back when Jason had been Robin, it had been a miracle if Dick checked in at all during a mission, and that was on the rare occasion that Nightwing even teamed up with Batman and Robin. Batman had used to lecture Nightwing furiously after missions when Dick had refused to use the comms. The old man had never been able to fucking tell Dick that he worried whenever he didn't hear from his son in dangerous situations, had instead turned it into lecture time with the insufferable Bat Dad who knows best instead. Dick had responded by screaming at Bruce about his control issues and inability to accept that Nightwing was an independent hero before storming out of the cave and refusing to talk to anybody in the family for a month. So, whatever had happened that made Dick realize all of Bruce's lectures were his irritating helicopter-y way of showing concern and to get him to actually check in during missions had to have been monumental. I'm sure Nightwing's fine. Oracle did not sound sure that Nightwing was fine, but I'll see if I can find any recent sightings of him in the area. Jason, on the other hand, was sure that Nightwing was fine. Nightwing was always fine. The golden Dick Grayson, the standard to which a younger Jason could never measure up, always managed to wiggle out of whatever situation he got himself into. If Nightwing had been the one captured by the Joker, well, Nightwing would have seen through Sheila's lies and not been tricked in the first place. But even if he had, he would have made it out of that warehouse before the Joker beat him halfway to hell. He definitely would have gotten out before the bomb went off. So, there was no reason to be worried about Big Bird. No reason for him to abandon his patrol of Crime Alley to go check on his former not-brother. No reason to. Last sighting of Nightwing was 4 hours ago, and he's not responding even on private comms, Oracle reported, disguised voice sounding truly worried now. Fuck. He was gonna have to go see what this stupid bird had gotten himself into. He fired his grappler in the opposite direction of where he'd been swinging, making his way towards the Bowery, even as Batman tersely stated that he was 14 minutes out. That was fine. Jason was 2 minutes out. He swung through the night, tuning out Batman ordering Robin to stay put on the comms, followed by the predictable response of yet another Robin refusing to listen and stay out of a fight. The warehouse Nightwing had been surveilling earlier in the night was quiet. When Jason reached it, which was either a very good sign or a very bad one, Jason landed on the roof silently, seeking out a skylight and bracing himself before glancing at the scene below. The warehouse appeared almost empty, save for the lone figure of Nightwing, apparently unconscious and tied to a chair in the center of the ramshackle building. Even from this height, Jason could make out the blood caked onto his not-brother's hair where he was slumped forward in his bonds. What he couldn't see was whether or not the vigilante was still breathing. Fuck. He was so getting caught by Batman for this. Jason slipped inside through the skylight and grappled down, landing softly in front of Nightwing, body tensed for a fight. When no one rushed him from the corners, Jason stepped forward closer to the captured bird. "Wing?" he prompted gruffly, glad that the voice modulator hid the trepidation. This was the first time he'd been this close to Nightwing outside of a fight. Nightwing didn't answer, so Jason inched closer and shook the other man's shoulders. "Wing, come on, man, you alive?" he pressed. Nightwing, predictably, didn't deign to respond. But Jason was close enough now that he could see the vigilante's chest moving up and down. He was breathing, which meant he was alive, which meant Jason could get the fuck out before the bat arrived. Exhaling in relief, Jason spun around, ready to aim the grappler and go, only to spot a timer attached to a suspiciously bomb-like device in the corner, the glowing numbers reading 3 minutes 31 seconds, but ticking steadily down. 3:26. A different timer was flashing before Jason's eyes, that god-awful laughter echoing in his ears. 3:13. Which hurts more, A or B? 3:02. Forehand or backhand? 2:54. Tell the big man I said hello. 2:41. Jason wrenched himself out of it with a snap, jerking his gaze away from the timer and back to Nightwing. Nightwing, who was still unconscious even as the timer ticked steadily towards 0. Nightwing, who Batman wasn't going to be in time to save. 1 minute, 57 seconds. Nightwing could get himself out of it. Hadn't Jason just been thinking that? If it had been Nightwing in Ethiopia, he would have rescued himself instead of getting himself murdered. Here was Big Bird's big opportunity to prove it. Only Nightwing wasn't waking up, and time was too quickly running out. 1 minute, 6 seconds. Jason forced his legs to unlock, yanking a knife and cutting the unconscious vigilante's bonds before slipping one arm over his shoulder, lifting and leaning to take Nightwing's dead weight and aiming the grappler. They had just touched down on the rooftop of the building next door, Jason setting Nightwing down on his back when the warehouse blew, debris and ashes scattering through the air. And that, finally, appeared to be enough to rouse Sleeping Beauty. Nightwing groaned, rolling over to his side as he spat blood onto the roof before his head lifted. The white lenses of a domino met with the white, glowing eyes of the helmet, and Nightwing stared. "Red Hood? What are you doing here?" Nightwing's speech was slightly slurred, but sharpening with each word. The vigilante sat up with a wince of pain, but wasn't stupid enough to try standing immediately. Thank fuck. Well, Jason couldn't exactly tell the truth without raising a whole hell of a lot of questions. Crime, Jason said, gesturing expansively at the blown-to-hell warehouse, then gesturing to himself. Criminal. Nightwing's head tilted, and he gave Jason an extremely judgmental look for a guy who'd been recently tied to a chair. There was a money laundering scheme, not your usual MO. Jason hated that Nightwing felt like he had a grasp on his MO. Maybe I'm expanding my repertoire. Ever think that, asshole? He said irritably. Nightwing just hummed in a way that Jason knew meant that he wasn't buying it. Expanding to what? Rescuing vigilantes? He asked, and Jason stomped closer so that he was looming over Nightwing, who was still seated on the roof. Who said this was a rescue? He growled. Nightwing didn't bother to look even slightly intimidated, lips twitching into a grin. You know, you're a really bad criminal, the vigilante said conversationally. Jason rolled his eyes. Yeah, I've been very naughty, and you and the dynamic duo are going to drag me to Arkham first chance you get, he filled in, only for Nightwing to snort. No, I mean, you're bad at being a criminal, he clarified with his obnoxious grin still in place. The words drew Jason up short. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? He demanded, and Nightwing's grin widened as he pushed himself to his feet. It means the word about your rules, about not hurting the working girls and not selling drugs to kids, has spread, the blue and black vigilante said, swaying slightly but successfully remaining on two legs. And Batman may be willing to dismiss it, but crime rates in Crime Alley have gone down ever since you claimed it as your territory. Jason swallowed, then squared his shoulders. Yeah, 'cause I put the bastards who break the rules down. Unlike your pack of cowards, he snarled. Nightwing just shrugged, unperturbed. Which is why Batman still wants to bring you in, he agreed cheerfully. Jason gave him a look that he couldn't see behind the helmet. But you don't? Nightwing waved a hand airily. Well, as long as you're doing the whole killing thing, of course we'll have to keep trying, but if you stopped... He trailed off, eyeing Jason significantly, while Jason fought off a wave of green. If I stop killing, then what? I get to be one of you? He spat. Nightwing watched him calmly, which only made Jason angrier. What makes you think I'd even want that? And why the hell would you even make an offer like that? Aren't you bats supposed to be paranoid? You don't even know shit about me. The other vigilante gave him a piercing look, his expression taking on that serious look that Jason remembered coming out on occasion. People often seem to underestimate Nightwing because of his cheerful demeanor, but Jason knew just how dangerous the vigilante could be underneath his airheaded smile. I've been watching you, Nightwing said, and now Jason was a little worried. The green receding in the face of his trepidation. Just what had his not-brother seen? I think you want to help people, but you're going about it the wrong way. And just like that, the green was back. The wrong way? Jason scoffed furiously, taking a step forward and jabbing a finger in Nightwing's direction. You're the one who's going about it the wrong way. You let them kill again and again and do fuck all to actually stop it. You lock them up in Arkham or Blackgate, two places that practically have revolving doors at this point, and they get out over and over again and just do the same shit. Hurt and rape and kill and ruins people's fucking lives. You think my way is the wrong way? My way is the only way that works to keep people safe. Nightwing had both hands in the air in a placating gesture, and only then did Jason realize he'd been effectively ranting his monologue at an injured bat. A total C-list rogue move. Fuck Nightwing and fuck this shitty day for reducing him to this. Jason was never coming to save one of the bat's asses again. He'd backed up a step, making to leave, when Nightwing spoke again, tone careful and measured. I know it can be frustrating and seem pointless, but killing is not the answer. Jason, who was halfway turned to fire his grappler over at the next roof, gritted his teeth and didn't turn back. Killing is the only answer. You bats are just too goddamn blind to see it. And if that makes me a villain in your eyes, so be it. I'll be the worst fucking villain the city's ever seen. And yet, you saved me tonight." The words hung in the air between them. "That doesn't mean anything," Jason bit out, refusing to look at the other man. He could feel Nightwing's eyes on him anyway. "It means something to me." Before Jason had to figure out how to answer that, there was a near-silent thud from across the rooftop, the sound of a bat touching down. Jason spun instantly, drawing his guns and aiming them at the cowled figure who just landed. "Batman," he greeted his former mentor coolly, heart thudding erratically in his chest. This wasn't the first time he'd run into the Bat. He was a criminal in Gotham. Of course, it wasn't the first time. But until now, it had always been quick, glancing interactions. A shouted threat across the rooftop, or the furious sound of pursuit as Jason slipped into the night. Never long enough for more than a word or two in exchange. Jason had known instinctively that he wasn't ready for more than that. He'd had plans at one point. Plans to try to get his former mentor, his adoptive father, to finally do the right thing and kill the Joker. But those plans had gone up in smoke when the pit madness had cleared the just enough for rational thought to peek in. Bruce hadn't killed the Joker since Jason's death. Not because he couldn't, since Batman was certainly skilled enough to take the fucker out once and for all. Bruce hadn't killed the Joker because he wouldn't. Because that sick fuck's life was worth more to him than Jason's death. That realization had hurt worse than anything the Joker had done to him. But it had also given Jason the clarity he needed to abandon his previous plans and return to Gotham for the right reasons. To finish the job that he died for and clean up the city, but do it right this time around. No stupid no-killing code, and no bats. Which made his current situation all the more frustrating. Red Hood. Batman returned his grating in his usual growl, and Jason held himself rigid to prevent the flinch that wanted to escape at hearing his former dad, mentor, address him so coldly. Logically, he knew there was no way for Bruce to know that it was him under here, but logic wasn't doing much for him right then. "Nightwing!" Nightwing chirped cheerfully from where he was now leaning heavily against the roof's guardrail. It broke through a steady rising panic in Jason's mind, and he and Batman both turned to look at the other vigilante with varying degrees of judgment. Nightwing only shrugged. "I was feeling left out." "Go home, Nightwing," Batman ordered, and Nightwing's bright grin barely wavered. "In a minute. I haven't finished thanking my rescuer yet," he countered, jerking his head in Jason's direction. "Rescuer?" Batman's intense gaze landed on Jason, and he felt his skin crawl, just barely able to keep himself from brushing a hand against his helmet to make sure it was still in place, and those eerie eyes couldn't see beneath it. "Yes," Nightwing said cheerfully. "My rescuer. I was just telling him that he should really consider joining up with us, if he rethinks the whole killing thing." "Not happening," Batman and Jason said in jarring synchronicity, then turning to glare to each other. "The Red Hood is a killer and a threat, Nightwing," Batman growled, looming in the ways he always did when he wanted to intimidate criminals, or convince one of his sons to back down. "Ouch, I'm hurt," Jason deadpanned, irritated, though he wasn't sure if he was more annoyed with Nightwing for making the offer or Batman for immediately nixing it. "Don't get your pennies in a wad, old man. I already told the Golden Boy where he could shove his offer." Nightwing frowned at him. "You should really think about it," he encouraged, and Jason scowled at him, an expression that was totally lost behind the helmet. "Unlike you, apparently I still have enough brain cells to recognize a bad idea when I hear one without needing to think about it," Jason said snidely. "Answer is no. I'm out." He aimed his grappler at the next building and shot off, but not quickly enough to miss Nightwing calling after him. "We'll take that as a maybe then." God, he was so fucking annoying. Jason was never leaving his side of the tracks again. Swinging back into Crime Alley, Jason kept half an ear open for the sound of pursuit, but it seemed Batman had his hands full taking care of his injured bird. Still, the hypervigilance that had saved his ass so many times stuck with him until he'd gotten well into his territory. The working girls waved at him as he swung by, and he gave them a quick salute in return. They worked out of a building he owned now, and it seemed to be working out well. It was much safer than going home with any of the Johns who paid for their time, and the girls had been grateful when he'd gifted the rooms to them. Suspicious, too, but he thought he'd won them over by now, when he didn't ask for anything in return. They weren't the only ones who waved when he passed either. Jason had been surprised by how genuinely glad Crime Alley seemed to be by having its own protector, but a truly shocking number of people seemed pleased to see him during his patrols now. The early days had been harder, when the alley was still expecting the worst from him. It made sense for them to be worrying, of course, given their past experience with crime lords who came in, took over, then ran roughshod all over the alley. Black Mask had nearly lost him the trust of the alley completely when he unleashed the Joker from Arkham in an attempt to rein in Jason. The news that Black Mask had broken Joker out of Arkham had Crime Alley tensed with terror, because at that point, the war between Black Mask and Red Hood had been going strong, and the alley's denizens all knew that. If Mask and Joker had reached an accord about Hood, then Joker would be coming for them. Strangely, though, Joker hadn't. Jason was still puzzled by it. He'd thought that his heart had stopped in his chest when he'd heard Mask had broken Joker out of Arkham, and he'd been expecting the worst all night, as he paced through the alley like a caged tiger on high alert for anything even slightly off. But the Joker never showed his face. Jason had felt eyes on him all night, watching, observing, but nothing ever happened. The Joker never made a move, and Jason never caught anyone actually watching him. Was never sure if the gaze he felt was anything more than his own paranoia. Weeks later, the Joker had been recaptured by Batman and Co., without ever doing anything more villainous than jaywalking as far as anyone could tell. It had confused the hell out of the entire city, and the placid, knowing expression on Joker's face on the TV when he'd been carted to Arkham had created a cold, unsettled feeling in Jason's stomach. Whatever he'd discovered that had put that expression on his face was bad news for everyone. But in the meantime, the alley had been relieved by the reprieve, and Mask had backed off almost completely after his plan failed. It had created a sense of tentative hope in the alley, and it was after that when Jason had really noticed the shift in the people's attitude towards him. And yet, he still couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched sometimes. Like cold eyes and pale skin were observing him and seeing far more than he'd wish. It was probably just his own paranoia. That was what Jason had pretty well decided, at least since it had been months since Joker's return to Arkham without a single peep from the clown. Jason was justifiably concerned over what would happen when the Joker escaped again, as he always did, and sensing eyes on him when there were none was probably just a manifestation of that worry. Still, it didn't make it any easier on nights like tonight, when he was already highly strung given his run-in with Batman, to feel like someone was watching him. Thankfully, Jason had pretty well finished his patrol earlier, and zipping all the way to the Bowery had pretty much finished up what he hadn't already gotten to. He could afford to turn in a bit early tonight when his nerves were still on edge. He aimed the grappler for his safe house on the first swing. There was hot tea and a good book calling his name anyway, and he could do with some Mr. Darcy's particular brand of dry humor after a night like tonight. Alright, and that is the end of Chapter 1 of Riptide by Punk Rock Hades. Sorry about any noise you hear in the background. There is a bunch of cars going by. Don't forget to leave comment and kudos to the original author and everything. And let me know if you have any recommendations, because I'd like to start reading a couple more things and everything, so yeah, give me some recs. And with that, I hope you have a great day. See you next time.